Welcome everybody to another episode of Joe's Coffee Chat Mental Health Awareness. I am Emily, the podcast engineer / co-host of the show, with host Jennifer A. Whitaker, and we have a special guest on today, Melanie. And I encourage everybody to check out all of our social media pages and YouTube channel, and like, share, subscribe, and so on. Special thanks to Marcus Hart, Jay Stoyan, and Zach Clayton for allowing us to have this show on their platforms. So, Jen, I'm going to pass it over to you to get us started today.
Alrighty then. Thank you everybody for tuning in with us. Be sure to share and subscribe. Today we're going to speak to Melanie, who is with which podcast group? What's the name of your show?
If You Are Happy.
Okay, so that's the name of your group?
Yeah.
And what's the name of your soon-to-come podcast?
Well, the soon-to-come podcast is You Are Happy. The name of the group is You Are Happy Girl. Sorry about that.
Okay, and when can people see it, or like when you go live, or where can they find it?
Well, the first show will be this Monday at 12 noon Eastern time.
Okay, this Monday. So today is February
Next Monday.
13th, 2023. So the first episode will be on February 20th, 2023.
Yeah.
For those of you who may be listening at a later date.
Okay.
And tell us about this, You're a Happy Girl. What is your goal, and how do you go about helping the audience listen or share?
So although I seem like a very happy girl, I came to I'm a mom of 4 kids. I got menopause. Everything was kind of in a fog. I really wasn't understanding. I really wasn't functioning at a higher level. I'm used to doing like 8 different tests at once. I had to write a list, walk away, come back. And once I listened to my body and listened to God and listened to a higher power of what I was supposed to be doing, it led me on a path to be able to lift my fog and to be able to lift my mental fitness, do something about it, right? Be able to help myself. When I helped myself, I realized that 2 out of my 4 kids were thinking about committing suicide, and I couldn't see it. I was in such a fog that I just didn't even know. There were signs there, and I was back, but did not know that they needed help. And it wasn't until truly I helped myself that I was able to help them. And then I figured that that's what God or my higher power was trying to tell me, that I need to reach out. I need to help other people, because it is so tough to go through it. And I chose to move forward and help my kids instead of taking a step backwards and say, oh my gosh, why did I stay in this fog and my kids were needing help? So, moving forward.
I will say this is a Christian-based show, so definitely give God good credit, because He is the Lord of Earth and the world and the universe. So definitely, if you want to say that you prayed and what He told you about this, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so if you tapped on my shoulder for quite a long time, is that I have something for you that I want you to do. And I said, no, I'm happy where I'm at. And like I did, just took everything away from me in order for me to listen. And so now I'm here to help other people, because having children with disabilities is not easy. But what you have to do is you have to take care of yourself. In a place where you can handle the challenges. And I'm not talking every once in a while, I'm talking every single day challenges. Pile up to something big and take care of them. If you're not in that right mindset, you're not going to get help.
That's very true. And I don't think a lot of people realize how being the mother, sister, or member, or even friend, maybe even clients or other people related to who that mentally ill person interacts with. I mean, unless they are that somebody that somebody mentally ill interacts with, I don't think most people realize how difficult it is for that social environment, the family, the friends, the coworkers, or however else that so many people interact with that somebody that is in their mind so deeply troubled. You know, it could be my PTSD. It could be, well, it sounds like your brain fog may have been depression or something like that. But it could even be for some people anxiety. Some people some list of these mental illnesses, or even in some case, they're linked to something physical with the brain. Like my paranoia, I didn't have until I had a head injury. And that was a result of physical brain damage. So that certain parts of the brain couldn't function at all. They were dead. And other parts were damaged in a way that made them overactive. So that was a literal injury to my head, traumatic brain injury. And that's what caused me to have certain ones. Like I didn't have any before that head trauma. But with my case, that is neurological, and this is physically something going on in my brain where it's physically damaged or dead, depending on what part. But then it shows as a psychological mental illness, and yet there's what you're talking about. What are all these medicines are putting us on? When in my case, and what sounds similar, that with your family member, it was not the traditional mental illness where it's the chemicals. Like mine was the physical brain. Yours, I mean, maybe you can tell listeners what we were talking about that I'm referencing.
Yeah, so you were talking about the brain-gut connection. And once if your brain cannot talk to some parts of your body, it shuts it down. And it's going to cause chaos inside your body. So you're talking about two different things. I'll give you a great example. I have a son with cerebral palsy, which is a brain injury, right? That's a brain injury at birth. And then you have me who didn't have a brain injury, but everything completely shut down. You know, so what it is you know, people like that. The same thing is you have receptors aren't talking. And if they're not talking, they can't communicate in different directions and causing chaos.
Right, the neurotransmitters.
Right. So that's what it's happening. Is you got to get those things talking, like the gut brain, the talk. But if you go out at, like last night, you had a great time for physical party, but you had way too much to drink. And say you're in a brain fog, you're not feeling well, your stomach is upset. That is your brain and gut shut down, right? It can't talk anymore. It can't communicate. It's causing chaos in your body. It could be a short chaos, it could be a long chaos. Right?
Well, that's a good example because mental illnesses do have a broader meaning as far as alcoholism, where that's, like you said, a long-term effect of the alcohol example.
Yeah. Or it could be stress. So like stress, anxiety, depression, all of the stress is the number one cause of heart attack. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yes, I did. I had a grandmother who had to get a stress test. She ended up with an open heart surgery because of a heart attack and multiple prior strokes that, like you're saying, originated with stress being so high and even possibly above the level of what the person really can handle. But it's just life.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great discussion right there because, you know, we're always told to breathe and everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's beyond that. You know, how many times when I was going through this, like, Melanie, just take a deep breath and everything will be okay. Well, I took like 5,000 deep breaths. Everything wasn't okay. You know, so there's sometimes when you...
I mean, that's not funny that it happened, but that's a great way of putting it.
it's on my desk, but it says, I do yoga, I drink green tea, I meditate, and someone thinks about it. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like everything that I was doing, because I am allergic to gluten, I'm allergic to dairy, I'm allergic to meat. Yes, I eat grass, right?
I know. That's what Joel's diet, my other podcast, is about, is all the food options for people like us. I'm allergic to gluten, soy milk, and egg.
Yeah. I was doing everything else. I took alcohol up, right? So there's times when you do everything right, but you still are not right.
Yeah.
You know? And I would say it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not be tough.
True. Sounds like that's your message for listeners, is that however educational this show can be today on Joel's mental health awareness, and hearing you, Melanie, is that it's not okay to say you listen to this podcast or you listen to something else or somebody else that makes you aware that you have something going on, but you don't seek help to do something about it. Because like partners and like what I like to talk about, maybe even featuring you more often on here to talk about this, and possibly me being on Your Happy Girl, and we can have a similar conversation, but still that wherever they hear us, or even somebody else they hear, the ultimate thing is these bring you the awareness, possibly the understanding, have something going on, and it's not just you, or not, quote, all in your head, like, but you got something that you actually need medical attention to, or for whatever reason, based on what all that chaos is, right? Mm-hmm. Or the lack of chaos because we're depressed, so we can't think at all with brain fog. I'm thinking about that you're describing.
Right.
And that I actually experienced my depression. But the ultimate thing is listeners need to pursue going to their primary care physician to get maybe a referral, as some insurances require, to a psychiatrist or to a therapist, psychotherapist, or possibly both. And if they already have one of those providers, they need to continue to regularly work with those providers. You know, the psychiatrist taking the medicine that he or she orders in the whatever dosage that's ordered. And if they don't feel, so say back to themselves, like recovered out of depression or whatever, then they need to consult with that doctor that prescribed it and say, here's how I feel, but I am taking whatever medicine at whatever dose you order and prescribe it, but here's how I feel. And possibly the doctor could then increase the dose or change it in some other way based on, you know, does it sound like they have too much of it, or does it sound like they don't have enough of that medication? Or even the possibility for the doctor to say, well, I don't think this one works, let's try another medication.
Well, you have the other aspect too. Like if your doctor is not speaking to you, it's okay to switch doctors. It's okay to seek a second opinion. It's okay, you know, if you're not feeling right with that one, it's okay to go to another doctor.
I guess I'm thinking about the fact that, so I have one therapist I saw for 11 and a half years, and she's now a friend of mine because she says she can't go without talking to me, even though she doesn't work as a therapist anymore. She's retired. And so she insists on we get coffee together once every 10 months. This was Monday a week ago. While out of work, I invited by her to get coffee together, one of our favorites. And she was telling me about how so many times people will take that medication, but then they stop taking it. And then they wonder why they're not feeling better. Because let's say they only took it at the prescribed dose 1 or 2 days or something, and they didn't give it enough time to actually be able to work and show what it can do to make them better. Or like she's told me, one of her number one problems with patients, that's a problem all therapists probably encounter in the retention, you know, like retaining clientele and their financial well-being, is that it's kind of like sometimes people with mental illnesses see a therapist for a few sessions, like, well, I'm not feeling better, so this isn't working, so I'm just not going to see the therapist. Versus that maybe it's not the right therapist, or maybe on the other hand, the patient isn't opening up about what's going on. And if the therapist doesn't know, they can't nurture it or to advise or whatever aspect of the providing help based on what's that trouble, right?
Yeah.
But it's so many times it's on the patient's end because they don't take the medicine, and that's issue with psychiatrists, because if you're not taking the medicine, it's not a bad psychiatrist, that's your bad decision.
Well,
And then similar with the therapist, not being open with them about what you got going on in your head.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. If you can't talk to a therapist, it's not the right therapist for you.
Well,
You need-
unless you're one of
you
those
need
that you don't talk
something
to
to-
anybody else and you always shut down. And if the patient always shut down and doesn't open up to anybody, it's not the therapist and it's them of the fact that they're not opening up to say, this is what I'm experiencing, help.
Yeah. There's a lot out there. But I guess what I'm
Oh yeah, and that's why I wanted to touch it, because it's a bigger problem than what you're talking about. Not to say we don't need to hit both angles, but I feel like a bigger portion of reality is opening up to this provider. They're not seeing the provider, they're not doing a good job, or possibly aren't a good match for them to get that whatever care. But it's on the patient end and their lack of responsibility in the sense of, like, again, they are prescribed medicine, but they don't take it. Or they go physically in the building of the therapist, they don't open up about what is their trouble. So the therapist can't do anything about it if they don't know what is the it.
That's true. And that's why I kind of mentioned too, maybe find somebody else that you think you can open to. There's no hurt in trying other people to do things you can't open up to one. It could have been an energy in the room that day, right? It could have been energy in your body that day. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been something that, I'll give you an example. I went for energy.
I mean, you saying it could be discomfort because some of my therapists or psychiatrists, the personality clashes with you.
It could have been a state in your brain that reminded you of something that shut you down. You just don't know, right?
You're talking about, like, in my case, PTSD, and we hit a trauma, and because we're traumatized, we can't really speak up.
Right, you just don't know. And so sometimes it's time to switch, or sometimes to try it again. And if you realize that, like you said, I did just a statue in the room or something, you need to communicate that. Maybe leave, talk to them on the phone, say, there's something where it really set me off, or then we can just talk on the phone, still open up communication, because communication will shut everything down.
So both of these, what you're saying and what I said, sounds like we're talking about the communication barrier.
Okay.
And the need to communicate.
Yeah, because anything can shut down communication, though. And sometimes you don't even know what shuts down the communication, such as I do a lot of networking groups for my company that I'm with, and I will be in the same room and sense somebody's energy, and it shuts me down. Like, if they have negative energy, they have energy.
I was going to ask, would that example be where it's overwhelming, like it's too much energy, or would that be like maybe the type of energy that sometimes there's negative energy and it's not always positive energy just because it's energy?
I've had both. I've had to where I have been and felt the person's nervousness next to me. I've had to where I felt their anger. I've had to where I felt like their fight and flight. I feel their fight and flight. And I gotta be very careful that it doesn't take over my body.
Or what about stress? What about stress? When someone seems tense, and you're like, oh, don't even give me your stress. I don't want to have enough of my own.
Oh, I do, and I have oils and all kinds of stuff that I have to do. I take that on. But that could be something that when you walk in a new situation that you're absorbing, you carry with you. So it doesn't mean that you can't give it another chance or shouldn't give it another chance. You just don't know what the outside you're bringing in from the outside.
I like what you just said, because that energy, or like talking about the stress and overwhelming sense of type energy, how many people have Asperger's like me? And it's the fact that we're in a new environment, and the overwhelmingness of that new environment is why, like, you're right, I shut down. I get very quiet to myself, and I just don't even talk, but I'm an extrovert. Mm-hmm. But my reaction is
angry. My daughter gets angry. My daughter has Asperger's, gets angry.
Yeah. Well, I get angry if I cannot find a way to accommodate myself to have familiar ground. Like, for example, okay, so I know that at least Emily and Kurt know my aunt passed away um, two Tuesdays from tomorrow. So, like, a little bit more than a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. But she passed away. I was very close to her. She used to be like a caretaker to me when my mom was away because she was my mom's sister. So my mom had to go to work or whatever, and my aunt would take care of me. And anyway, so she and I had a special bond because she was so involved in my life, even though she was an aunt and not like a mother or whatever. But to me, she was like a grandmother because she's 20 years older than my mom, or at least was. Anyway, so she passes, and that day we had to suddenly do the change. You know, this with Asperger, those sudden changes.
Yeah.
So suddenly, I'm supposed to sleep till 10 a.m. because this is one of my off days, and I'm trying to catch up on sleep. And Marjorie, my stepmom, calls me at somewhere around 6:30 or 7 in the morning and says, "Hey, honey, sorry to wake you, but Nana's getting very sick. So I need you to go ahead and get up and pack, you know, these certain things for 3 or 4 days or how many days she said, in your luggage and everything, your medicine and everything else, so we can leave at this certain time." There was like, I don't know, 9 or something, but only like 2 hours later. To go to the airport and make this flight that I'm booking us in right now for this certain time of the, I think it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something was when to be departing. But it's just the abrupt sudden change, right? And then a little bit of that, I don't really react. Okay, yeah, cool. So, well, what kind of temperature? Okay, so I'll bring some warm clothes because it's, 20 degrees out there where we're going, or whatever. And I just pursue the order, so I went packed and everything. But then there was, our flight got delayed, and then it got delayed again at the new time, and then eventually canceled. And anyway, so we go from having to leave the house at something like 9 to be at the airport to then it was 9 p.m. that same day before our plane even took off. So that was like, a change after change after change. And then there was, once we got to my aunt's house, now uncle's, because he's keeping the house, but it's just him now. He doesn't have order in his house. We were dealing with all of the death certificate and all these other things that were the things you have to do when they decease before you can actually have time to sit and grieve and have a memorial and all the other things. That's what we all need, right? But there's certain things you have to do react first. That's when you're not ready. So when we spent 3 days doing all that paperwork stuff and everything else, getting her medical information closed up and stuff like that. Well, there was chaos, and I didn't know what to expect. So, I mean, on day 3 of that 4-day period, yeah, I got like your daughter, a little irritable and a little moody, as I call it, because mine's not angry. It's not anger, but it's that same kind of like too much energy that's negative energy, right?
Right.
I call it more frustration because I don't think I actually have anger. I get frustrated. It's frustrated by so much. We don't know where we'll be tomorrow. We don't know what time. I need to know what time to get up. I need to know what time to get dressed. And it was a panic in my sense. So anyways, I found that my days usually, at least when we're not having the podcast, which for me is Tuesday through Thursday, I spend at a coffee shop. So I went into my comfort zone and I said, I need to get a ride. So I asked for my parents to take me to a certain coffee shop that was near my uncle's house. I said, can I go to this certain coffee shop? Can you get me over there? And I'll do a little bit of my work and work on writing my books and some other stuff. I said, that way I can get a break from this chaos. And then my parents were like, yeah, sure. What time would you like us to pick you up? So, it was something like noon when I wanted to be dropped off. And I said, well, anytime you feel ready before dinner. So it was like 4:35 or something when they picked me up. But I got that calamity, that calmness in that 4 to 5 hour time frame of unfamiliar environment. Even though it was a different location, it was a Starbucks. So I was still at a Starbucks. I still knew how it worked there.
Right.
And I was then working on my books and all the other stuff that's part of my everyday work week. And so sometimes that's where, a lot of us with Asperger's, even though it's not considered a mental illness, we have those same similar behaviors, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I like about what you're talking about with your daughter. But we have to also, then again, like you're saying, identify the problem and like draw the line. Okay, this is what I need. I need to find a way out and get in this certain situation I need to help me better handle the whatever situation that's the chaos, right?
Right.
Because it wasn't like to the normal person that environment wasn't chaos. It was disoriented, and well, then again, that goes back to what you're talking about. See what I mean?
Yeah, because my daughter has to have a room when she comes here to escape to. She has to. My parents don't necessarily understand that. So when we went and visited them, they were like, they're like, I can't, we have to have it set up a certain way. And my dad's like, no, that's not how it is. I said, no, Joe needs her own room. And they're like, no, that's not how it goes. Yeah, so it's a lot of other people not understanding. I understand it. I need my time. If I get too overwhelmed, just give me a minute. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 2 hours. Just give me a dang minute, right? That's how I know just give me a dang minute. Like, stop getting in my face and let me work through it in my head before I can think about it. So I understood where Joe was coming from. Joe also passed up going on a Disney cruise because she needs her own space in her room. He doesn't think that she's not a she anymore. Joe doesn't think that, that Joe can mentally handle all the family stress and the chaos of the Disney and the people around Joe unless there's a place to escape. And on a cruise ship, there's not.
Well, and that's true. That's true. We do need quiet space because we get easily overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
So not the fact people are there. It's not the fact there's music. It's that our brains cannot absorb as much information, as much stimuli as a normal brain. And what's interesting, my best friend is a neuroscientist, like a medical doctor specifically specialized in the brain. So he's been, give or take, 16 years in college to be a cardiologist, neuroscientist, and I forget 2 other specialists at the same time. So he can do 5 different types of medical doctor jobs. Because there's always just regular practitioner, PCP that any medical doctor can do, in addition to his 4 specialties. Well, anyway, so as nerdy as he and I are, he always gets to studying stuff, researching, and then making conversation about our findings. He told me in one of his he showed me one of his scans. So it has a number. So I don't know whose brain this is, but he showed me how there's a round brain we know like this that most people have. It's just the oval kind of round. And then he showed me a picture of someone, and it was bumpy all over. Just a bunch of bumps. It wasn't round like a sphere, and it wasn't the oval shape of a normal brain. What he was showing me is people with autism can be actually confirmed. That's their actual diagnosis with, I don't know if it's an MRI or a CT, but some kind of brain scan where a radiologist like him can read it and see that brain is physically shaped different. And he was saying what that shows people like him that are in those fields and in research is that someone with autism, whether it's high function like Asperger's, medium function or whatever, we physically lack certain parts of the brain. And that's why we can't handle as much of whatever and why we have less independence. Like, my mom gave this example. If the whole front porch is covered, and rocks and sands of all different colors and shapes and sizes. I would personally, and I confirm this, go out there and it was like, oh my God, this is too much for me. I can't handle this, and walk away. But then if she's told me, she gave me not boxes, what are they called? Buckets. And she says, ones are this color, put in this box, one's this color and size, put in that box. Oh, that's easy. I can do that. And I'd sit there organizing all this chaos that's all over the front porch to be in 5 boxes. Buckets. But, okay. And she says, but what comes with your Asperger's is that you can't stop and say, here's a solution. If someone identifies a solution and tells you how to do it, the job is easy. No matter how stressful the job itself is, we just can't find how to solve the problem. Well, if someone tells us how to solve it, to us, a lot of things that are complicated, like making a new app. Like I'm working on developing an app, like actual programming, Python language. Well, so I took a continuing education course. Now I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's easy. I can do that. Why? Because someone told me how to do it. And it wasn't the fact that it's education, but there's the example with the rocks, that wasn't education, but my mom just said, this color goes in this box and that color goes in that box, and suddenly it's easy to me. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to map it out for us. And whatever part of the brain does that is one of the parts that people with various levels of functionality, but autism, high function, low function, whatever, but that's one of the uniform things we have. We are missing those certain parts of the brain, but there may be others I'm not talking about, but we physically lack parts of the brain.
That makes it. You said something, my doctor reminded me too. So, like, everything's not lined up, and it's true. Everything has to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you can't put things in the middle. But I noticed with my daughter that if I give her time to solve the issue, she might go away, have a little, like, I call it fix, because it's something's not connecting. But if she can go away on her own time, start lining them up how she can, usually lines up the same, but she has to walk away in order to line them and be functioning again.
I call it processing. We have to process the information before we can act on it.
But to outsiders, before we knew that my daughter had this issue, it didn't look like processing. It looked like a mental breakdown. It looks like you weren't able to be in society. It looks like that maybe even the parents something wrong. I remember one time I sat next to my cousin's son who has autism, and he had the shaking, and he did that, right? And I sat next to him. I wouldn't touch anything because I know you don't. It's their world. You don't put anything out of alignment, right? And I would ask her about it. And the mom came over and said, hold on, give me a minute. And she came overnight. But I said, so tell me about this. And all of a sudden, the light went on because I wasn't interrupting his world. I was asking him about it. He told me all about everything that was going on in the case. And it went from this to it was a pretty cool moment. The mom just looked at me and goes, if you're so protective, that I was going to cause a fix. I was going to cause an episode. That I was going to cause, It was a pretty cool moment. It's just like, I'm not.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. I'm not interrupting. But we have to learn how to communicate with that. Not you. I had to learn when my daughter was diagnosed over a year ago. I had to relearn how to, because our communication shut down where we didn't like each other.
Well, and see, that's something that you might like my book called Dealing with Autism, because that's what I hit it. Part 1 is towards the family and other people that are the social environment around them. and part 2 is towards the actual autistic. And I hit the idea of communication as the ultimate barrier of any functionality, any form of performing in life, whether it's around the house with sweeping, it's on a job, it's even being able to go to school, whether it's K to 12 or it's college or whatever. But the ultimate barrier, and my book teaches people how to, whether the people on the outside of how to help an autistic or they're the actual autistic, and it's part 2 that teaches them their side of it. But it hits from both sides to bring together the ultimate functioning of the autistic in at least the world that understands them through that reading or being taught by somebody who read it.
Right, and a lot of autistic people are extremely smart.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe is extremely smart.
But we need that help with that one skill that we all lack in order to perform any job. Because like you're saying, it's not that we lack intelligence, it's not that we lack skills beyond that one. That is the barrier of all, because I don't care how much math you know, you can't be a mathematician or a tutor unless you communicate with whoever that's the work environment you'll be working with, or the spouse that, or the family member that will help with your bills and other things you can't handle with your autism, right? But still, it comes back to the communication. Because we've got all that knowledge, like you're saying, like I have 8 professions. Okay, so I understand that very well. But what I taught in this book was what my therapist I worked with for 11 years taught me. So I'm not the originator of the finding. I'm just the one that wrote a book about it.
I'll have to send you some of my daughter's, the dancer in New York. She went to AMDA.
Professional or what? You said she's a dancer.
Yeah, she's I guess you could say semi-pro because she did change. She's a modern dancer. Her innovation of things and how she moves, I will bet you a lot of it has to do with her understanding autism, how she wants to.
But there's a okay, you're talking about an art. Think about that, an art. Really cool. What is the one skill we all have? If we have autism, we have a talent for what?
Yeah. Interpretation.
Art. Mm-hmm. Anybody with autism has a talent for art. Like, there's something about that physical difference of our brain that we can have a really hard time with technical stuff or stuff that doesn't have a consistent pattern. Like I studied accounting. Well, an expense is always an expense. It always causes you to lose money. That's a black and white picture. Okay, income always causes you to gain money. It's always reported as revenue, or in everyday words, sales, okay? It's a black and white picture. That's why I did well in it and got 2 degrees in it. But you go to some other stuff like sociology and psychology, and there's gray areas. It's all gray because this person can have certain behavior and they have this condition. Another person can have that same behavior and they have a totally different condition. Yep. So we do good in the black and white, but part of the, as I say, gift of being autistic is that we have a very creative mind. That's one of the uniform pieces of the brain that we do keep. The creativity side, the imagination, just that a lot of us don't know what kind of field to go into or even understand the reality as kids that there's a way we can make money painting pictures or whatever kind of art. And somebody has to then again make the ABC to get us to where we can actually have a job where we're paid to do that something where we love to spend so much time doing and do so well.
Yeah. She's free when she dances. She's free of stress, free of anxiety, free of everything. And it was interesting what you said. They brought up a situation we went through actually in middle school with Joe. You know, she was, and I keep saying Joe, I'm getting used to the she-he thing with her. But we were in class, and you know, I was cheering for both sides. You know, she was on one team in volleyball, but she was cheering for the other because her other. And this girl came up to her and said to her, you know, you can't cheer for both sides. in Joe's mind, we didn't know she had autism. In Joe's mind, it was okay. She used to cheer for both sides because she has friends on both sides, right? And the abuse that she took because she wouldn't stand down, because did not back down from the belief that she had friends on both sides and she could cheer. This girl went for that. But, you know, in her
I
mind,
wonder how common it is for those Asperger's or even autism, but autism in general, to often be the and being made fun of. Because personally, my parents had to constantly be involved with the principals and the teachers and so forth because I was the one that every bully bullied.
Yeah.
All the way from second grade when we first moved to Texas until I graduated high school.
Yep. Joe
I mean, like you were saying about it being very smart, I was in the top 3% of the nation academically and in leadership and some other skills, right? My writing, I was recognized as a national scholar at age 18. But I was also the target of all bullies. So people think, oh, well, they're the top of the class. They got it all. That includes the bullying.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have it all in the sense they mean. We tend to be that target because it's that they don't understand our differences and or possibly they don't understand that we're different because that's not a condition you can tell looking at somebody like being in the wheelchair.
Yeah, and it wasn't readily talked about either. You know, it wasn't readily, yes, I know. We got involved in the conversation. It wasn't back for me as parents. It was readily. I have a disability. I have a pretty severe disability, but it wasn't a Asperger's. It wasn't autism. It was a different type of disability. And but it changed. We went to a separate. You know, we weren't allowed to communicate with the normal people. We weren't allowed. We weren't allowed to do that. You know. I've come a long way, so I can finally say that I have a learning disability. I read this at grade level. You know, I have dyslexia. You just see high foot it's supposed to be girl. I type that. You know, but to me it looks like girl, but when it looks like 4 or 5 times like that's not the word girl. You know, it took me a long time to be okay with that. You know, but yet I still get bullied.
Did you say yours was dyslexia?
I have dyslexia, and then I have a reading comprehension, so I only read at a 6th grade level. So,
okay.
And then because that,
I was wondering, because you pointed out about your typing, I was picking up dyslexia.
Uh-huh.
I'm a special needs tutor, so I work especially with special needs, and so I know what are their different signs, and like the proper way to educate them so they learn it the correct way.
And that was never available for me. But I have got to get going. I would love to continue this conversation because I had
definitely check the calendar, work with Emily, and pick some other days, and then maybe Emily can talk about what's your time for your show. If you'll remind listeners before you go what time it will be, starting on February 20th, 2023. What's it called, and what will be the time?
It's called Joy Happy at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and it'll just be a short show. Just try to keep it 30 minutes. You know, and then maybe parody conversations from show to show, just to keep things going.
Sounds good. Well, definitely stay in touch with Emily, and let's try being on each other's shows. And next time you're on this one, we'll pick up about what we're talking about, unless you want it on Your Happy Girl as well.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Cheers and
bye. Bye.
Bye. Well, she's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Who found her?
I'm not sure which one met her first, but We both met her through the Happy Neighborhood Project.
Oh wow, some amazing people there. Did you have anything to add to carry on what Melanie and I were talking about? Any input or opinion of it?
I thought it was very interesting. And then mental health is a very important topic. So,
I'm sorry, I don't like the sound. You said mental health is a very blank.
important topic.
Oh yes.
That shouldn't be taken lightly. And
very truly.
If you need help or have questions or anything like that, to seek out somebody to help you with whatever it is.
Yeah, like we were saying, if you don't have a psychiatrist or therapist, you start by going to your primary care doctor, which is general practitioner, some people call them. But that you'd start with going to that somebody and letting them know about what's going on in your mind, and ask them who you should see. And often they say a psychiatrist or therapist or both. But then you would be able to talk to your insurance or go on your insurance's website to find reviews and a list of different therapists, psychiatrists, or both that work with your insurance and take it so that you'd have a means to pay them. And your insurance covering with a copay, possibly, as opposed to the full cost.
Yeah.
Do we have any announcements, Emily?
Wanted to on March 17th. Well, there is a International Day of Happiness event by the is March 20th, or the Monday this year. However, the Happy Neighborhood Project decided to do having the event the Friday before that, which lands us on March 17th. And it lasts from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific, or noon to 6 Eastern. And tickets right now are $40. So I encourage everybody, if you plan on going, to get your tickets ASAP. There will be speakers, prizes, speed networking, among other things. And one thing is that we are looking to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the most people speed networking at one time. The current record is 1,068, set in 2014 by Belgium. So I encourage everybody to come to that. And then March 18th and 19th, the Mutual Aid Network is having a Solidarity Summit. And stay tuned. More details will be coming.
Do we know a website where they need to go?
Mutualaidnetwork.org.
Yeah, I'm about to post that. www.mutualaid .org. Oh, it's not mutualaid.com, it's Mutual Aid Network.
Yes. mutualaidnetwork.org.
Okay, let me correct this before I confuse people. Okay, is this correct? mutualaidnetwork.org?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the one we're going to later on announce what is happening in the states, right?
Yeah, well, the dates are March 18th and 19th. But save for more information about what's going to be happening in those 2 days, that kind of thing.
Do we know when we'll find out what's going to happen?
But as I get new information, I'll let everybody know.
Okay, so we're sort of in the loop right now of just waiting for whoever to decide.
Yeah, or the details are still being worked on.
Okay. So any other announcements?
Not that I can think of at the moment. Those are the two biggest ones at the moment, I think.
Okay, then I'll go ahead with the announcements I make. To everybody who is listening or watching, you may know that I talk a lot about the Aspire Women for Excellence Bible study. Thanks to all of you listeners who are sharing or talking about this. The Aspire Women for Excellence Bible study is growing, and we have a growing group of women of various ages who are adults, but various ages, getting together for networking, Bible study, working together where we come together to have time that each of us work while we're motivating one another to work on whatever is our task related to our job or home responsibilities while sitting on the computer. And we have a lot of other stuff going on, like social events, coffee get-together groups, so forth. So whether it's you or somebody you know, please be sure to spread the word about the meetup group that's on meetup.com called Aspire Women for Excellence, ASPIRE, Women for Excellence. That is where you also find myself, Jennifer A. Whitaker, all throughout the week at various events related to growing in faith and growing as far as networking and stuff like that related to our professions, while following God in those directions as far as where we go with all those decisions related to work or personal life. Also, another announcement, we are still looking for a social media marketing candidate. You may be a virtual assistant or somebody else who can do this, or you may be a digital marketer, etc. But we're looking for a social media management person to post on our social media for us regularly at some portion of profit share in return. Everybody on our team gets a certain percentage of the profits, and none of us are on salary. So if you're interested in being that candidate for your portion of the profit share as we work together to grow this podcast, please go to calendly.com/Jen's Books and More. That's CALENDLY.com/JENNS Books and More. And that's how you get on my calendar to visit with myself and possibly Emily and other people on the team as well, like Kurt. there are various decision makers, and we'll work together to see how well what you have to offer fits with what we need, and of course our personalities getting along. If you would like to be on our podcast, please schedule the date you want to be on our show by going to calendly.com. That's calendly.com/Jaws Coffee Chat. And that's JAWS Coffee Chat. You'll be able to select among podcasts that are part of the Jaws Coffee Chat or other podcasts in the network with the World of Ability, where you'll also find myself, Jennifer A. Whitaker, the host and owner, also author. But anyways, you'll be able to find others where you will find me. Please be sure to subscribe, follow, like, or share Jaws Coffee Chat on the social media where you found us, or the app where you found us. We would love to have you here regularly, listening, watching, or sharing. Be sure to subscribe to Jaws Coffee. That's on any podcast app where you like to listen, or on social media where you find us. And be sure to, if you're curious about my books I talk about, go to Jen's Books and More to find them and more of our podcast episodes. That's JENNS booksandmore.com. Back to you, Emily.
I'd like to thank Melanie and for coming on, and to anybody who has tuned in. We are here every Monday. So at 2:30 p.m. Central. Our next mental health awareness show actually is in 2 weeks, due to President's Day next Monday. So on February 28th will be the next mental health awareness show. I encourage everybody.
Wouldn't that be Monday the 27th as opposed to the 28th? Today's the 13th.
Probably, yeah. The 27th. But I encourage everybody to tune in, and if you'd like to join us on Zoom and participate in the conversation, you can connect with us at jawscoffeechat@gmail.com, as well as for any other questions, comments, and so on with that email address. Encourage everybody to check out all of our Jaws Coffee Chat social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube channel. And so subscribe, like, share, comment, and so on. And so on behalf of myself, and the Ability Podcast Network, we wish you a safe and productive and to stay happy.